So welcome to second hour of Ladies Can We Talk on our roundtable. I have my leading ladies here, Lori Medina and Chris Davis.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Hi.
And I believe we already have on the phone Merrill Hope. Hi, Merrill.
Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Just great. You know, Merrill, I told our listeners before the break, in fact, at the start of the show, I was mentioning also that we're just going to focus on two stories tonight. And we talked a lot in the first hour about the Paris attack, the Islamic attack in Paris. And then this hour, I really want to turn to this University of Missouri protest. And Merrill Hope is a great writer on Breitbart. If you don't read Breitbart, it's one of the best websites on the web. Not as good as Ladies Can We Talk, but besides that, it's a great website.
Merrill's fantastic.
Yeah. And you've written a lot about education. And so I think a lot of Americans are watching this protest. In fact, I'll tell you, Merrill, when we first saw this massive protest starting, our first reaction was, wow, must have missed something that happened at Mizzou. Something horrible must have happened to bring about this protest. But I haven't found it so far. So, you've been working on this story and watching it. So tell us what you've learned about this protest.
Well, I should also say that Breitbart itself has covered these in almost real time over the past week, these protests. And what you come to find out is you got a lot of kids who claim to be broke that come from very wealthy families. No evidence seems to be showing up, but they sure got a lot of demands, don't they?
Unbelievable demands. And, you know, I actually saved it for you to listen if you want, but there's a Million Student March hashtag now on Twitter, and you can just tell our listeners there are three things they're demanding, if you want to.
Well, they were demanding, first of all, free college for all. They were also demanding the complete disillusionment of, dissolving all the existing debt, college loan debt on earth in this country. And they're also demanding $15 an hour minimum wage for campus workers. But some of the marches have gotten into bed with pro-Palestinian groups. So you'll also see, and in Texas, there were two colleges. There were three universities in Texas that did partake in the march. The University of Texas at Austin, Texas State San Marcos, and a little college, I believe it's called Angelina College in Lufkin in East Texas. And not UT, but the other two did coordinate their events with a pro-Palestinian group demanding, as did many other major universities in California, at UMass, in Amherst, that they want the universities to divest out of Israel. Now, what UT did differently was they got a whole gun-free Texas, UT gun-free thing going. So they went that route. They did not join with the pro-Palestinian groups.
I have to say, Merrill, everything you're describing, it's so disassociated, or it just seems like it's almost a protest mentality and just latching on to any gripe they can think of. I mean, they're not even really connected. And I will say for our listeners, there may have been some personal incidences at University of Missouri where maybe someone treated someone else with disrespect, but there wasn't some massive, horrible racial incident. But it's like this, we've infused these kids with just the right to protest and almost think an afterthought, wait, what is it we should protest this week? Do you think that's fair or not?
Well, I think what's fair to say is it doesn't start in college. I think when many of us went to college, our parents would say, you send your kid to school, you get a radical. But it started in the college years. We're no longer living in a time when you send your kid to college and you get a radical. You send them to pre-K, you're getting a radical because of the ideology of how they teach the children today that's all based on a social and emotional learning model. And this has been going on. I know everyone loves to blame Common Core, but this has been going on previous to Common Core.
Can you give some examples of that? I mean, I'm not disagreeing. I would just love to have you explain what you mean by that term, social and emotional? Yeah.
The social and emotional is more of feelings-based learning. It's what people get upset with when they talk about Common Core. Now, the problem is we lump everything into Common Core, and then the experts say, well, it's not Common Core. It's like in Texas. There's no Common Core in Texas, but there is college and career readiness, which is still built on the same modality of social and emotional learning. And down in San Antonio, down in Austin, the universities, they're pumping this stuff right into the school systems. Up here in North Texas, Prosper ISD had some expert come in from another state I don't know if she got here because we had an ice storm. This was last winter.
God intervened? No, go ahead.
Yeah, who knows? But the point being that we're no longer teaching on a academic basis. There's so many names for the same thing, or a traditional classical education where what was more important was what you learned, fact-based, knowledge-based, academic-based, whatever you want to call it. Today it's more about how you feel, how you feel. And, you hurt my feelings. And basically we teach moral equivalence. We don't teach right and wrong. I had the great, I don't know whether it's a misfortune or fortune, to have sat through a major one of these kinds of conventions in two instances. One was at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley in California, and one was at South by Southwest last year in Austin. And when you hear what they're doing, it's a philosophy that is about teaching children there is no right and wrong. My feelings matter as much as yours do. And, anything goes. Well, how do you teach? How do you teach right from wrong? Now, the problem is they're doing a very good job teaching these kids how to act out, but they're not really teaching how to fit in. And all this stuff lately with microaggression, you just can't hurt anyone's feelings. Or I think I even did a piece on costumes, Halloween costumes offending people.
Yes, I'm actually glad you raised that because, this incident at Mizzou was one thing, but the Halloween costumes that was started at Yale. Mm-hmm. And then there was another one that, Merrill, you probably did see this story about Claremont McKenna College and the faculty, or she was a faculty or an administrator?
The dean
had to resign. Right. Mm-hmm. Because, did you see that story, Merrill?
Yeah.
I mean, that one really struck me because the dean was trying to be nice to this girl who was saying, I feel kind of lost here because I grew up in a majority Hispanic neighborhood, and now I'm at a school that, Hispanics are not the majority, and all of a sudden I'm feeling kind of, and the dean tried to reach out. I mean, we've told kids they could, and so the girl went on a hunger strike demanding the dean be fired, and so the dean quit the next day.
And this is a problem because the biggest problem that's coming from this is they're teaching the children about anarchy. When I covered the McKinney pool party stuff that happened up here in North Texas, one of the things that I found astounding was, they were trying to turn it into Ferguson, but they couldn't turn it into Ferguson, and they couldn't do it for several reasons. One, you had a 30-pastor coalition who anticipated this would happen, but there was another reason, despite public education, because that's a big problem, that they couldn't make this happen, and that was because people in Texas are living a very different life than they're often stereotyped to be living. They're living what Martin Luther King spoke about. Those neighborhoods were integrated. People all did well. You saw all kinds of political values and ethnic values, but people got along. So when the push came to shove to push it, and the best part was is they'd argue with each other, but then they would pray together, and that was the end of it. So you don't see that, and we reported on it because we felt it was important that people understood why Ferguson could not happen in McKinney.
So, Merrill, this is Lori. What do you think we should do with these whiny kids at Mizzou? What should we do with them? What's the solution here?
Well, the solution doesn't start in college, like I'm saying. It starts back in the public school system. And I know everyone doesn't want to blame they only want to blame Bill Gates, but Bill Gates is far from the only one at fault with what's wrong with public education. And the teachers' unions have a lot to do with it, or in Texas, I would say more TASA and TASB, which I write about all the time, lobbyists and unions. And the way teachers have been educated for 50 years to become teachers is very different than the teachers some of us had or our parents would have had. So it really is about an examination of stop reforming everything. For all this reforming, this is what you're netting.
Well, this is Chris, and, I just was going to interject that, you're so right. It's not about education anymore. It's not about fact-based. And, you can go back to the self-esteem movement, way back. And so many of us grew up, our parents sent us to public school, and that was that. And we learned, we graduated, we went on and did life. Now, education is a huge decision for parents, and it absolutely should be a big deal. I was at a dinner party Friday night, and a conservative friend talked about his 2 kids who were extremely liberal. And I thought about it, and I thought, public schools, public universities.
You know, it used to be also that schools share the same values as the parents.
Good point.
They
wow.
don't.
Good point.
And I don't care how red the state is, the schools are blue.
Well, you know, and the thing is about the public school system is that a lot of parents, they say, well, you know, that may go on in other schools, but it doesn't happen in my school. And my school is so great. And, you know, and I feel like a lot of times parents, they feel like their facilities are very nice facilities. They're very clean. They have lots of resources, lots of technology. Smiling teachers that, you know, are kind to them and kind to their children. And so therefore, they must have a quality education. And really, their examination of what happens with their children during those, 6, 7, 8 hours doesn't go beyond the facilities and the smiling teacher. And so, Merrill, how do we wake up parents to examine past these two things?
That has been the most important question to ask, that yet no one, until someone's child goes over the radar, they get in trouble. They suddenly get diagnosed with an emotional disorder. Suddenly the teacher finds something wrong with them, and suddenly they have ADHD. This happens all the time. Then suddenly parents wake up, and unfortunately people don't wake up until it happens to them. And I wish I could say, because I do, parents call me all the time, and, organized parents, and you got to go to your board meetings. And parents will call me up in tears. No one will go with me, and well, can you get one friend? That's a problem. I think also there is a middle ground that we have to be aware of, because some people get extreme, that everything is a problem, everything is an affront. Well, everything isn't. And there have been times when I have actually defended districts because they didn't do something wrong and people overreacted. And I think the more intensified it gets, the more overreactionary parents can get too, which is not always the best way to move forward. Not to say that their claims are not valid. I'm a parent too. So I understand personally, as a parent who I have public school, charter school, homeschool, public school, private school. I've done a lot of them, and I do empathize tremendously. But we still have to be intelligent and be fair-minded, because not everything they're doing is wrong. But when something wrong happens, parents need to organize and go to their school board meetings. Although here's the problem, and this for me is a huge problem. In Texas, you have a lot of people don't like charter schools because they don't have publicly elected school boards, and I understand that. You could throw the people who created it out. But what you do have here is you have a school board that are lobbyists. They get elected, and then they're lobbyists, and then they're in love with their school administrators, the others, the union, TASA. And you're not, and until parents realize, they sit there and they get frustrated, and they're on Facebook and they're talking amongst themselves. But I think at some point you have to say, I'm not happy. I don't know what my kid is learning. You as things become more technological, you will know less and less. So until 2 people, you don't need 1,000. You need 2 people, and then maybe a third will come, and a fourth will come. And I wish I had an answer for you on that. I mean, what we try to do is inform so you understand what's occurring.
We are speaking with Merrill Hope, who is a writer at Breitbart. She's I don't know if you use the term investigative reporter, but that's what, to me, part of what you are: investigative reporter, journalist, a writer, a blogger.
Definitely.
Writing on Breitbart, focusing especially on education issues. And honestly, you've written so many great pieces. I believe I posted a link to your article that kicked off this conversation. Million student march demands free college now, emboldened by Mizzou protests. So we could probably spend hours talking about just the attitude students have acquired that is such a disservice to them. But I think we actually have to go off to a break instead. So Merrill Hope, thank you for calling in, for all your great insights.
Thanks, Merrill. It was awesome.
Thank you for having me.